In the very first class, I had discussed about foreign policy perspective. Okay, so what actually made the foreign policy, and this is very important for exam. Okay, so you also give attention, you pay attention to what I say. Okay, so when we talk about the foreign policy, determinants and objectives of foreign policy are very important. I will share a PDF with you where you will get determinants and objectives of foreign policy. But you see that understanding only the principles, determinants, and objective is old way or old fashioned, and hence we are also trying to look into different aspect of foreign policy like a soft power. Now we are talking about and how we can uh, bring foreign policy into even our you see domestic politics. Okay. So first, in the very first class, you remember we have discussed about some of the determinants. When we say determinants, we have the history, geography are the determinants, right? Tradition is the determinants, and then we also have international relation and international situation happen to be one determinants. We have also determinants related to treaties, agreements, and the conventions. United Nations organization happen to be another determinants of foreign policy. If you number it out, the determinants of foreign policy. Then we talk about objectives of foreign policy. This we include principles of foreign policy. So if you see the determinants, we started with the geography happens to be one determinant. I'm not going to explain it because I have already explained about it. So to be very precise and so that you can be pinpoint while answering, it is important to understand the differences between the three. But many a time when we give an answer to a questions, there are some overlapping in answering a question. So when we talk about the determinants, there are factors like geography and topography happens to be determinants that determine our foreign policy, how it will be. When we talk about the Indian Navy base, so we actually see a Mars coastline that will determine our foreign policy, how it will be. Our neighboring countries, our relationship with the neighboring countries is also determined by the geography and the topography that we have. Okay, so we have a moderate weather, but at the same time, we have also temperature, high temperature. At the same time, there are also snowfall in certain places that will also determine our relationship with neighboring countries, and that determine some of the facets of our foreign policy. Okay, and then after the geography, we also have history and the traditions. That we have already made a mention about history and the tradition. What our history said. When we talk about our history, we have to go back to colonial era. So colonialism shape our mindset, and from colonialism, what we have derived is the principle of anti-colonialism. So we don't want to be under the circles of colonialism, and we want to, like eliminate any kind of colonial bonding. So that has shaped our foreign policy. And we also advocated, we have been advocating the values related to colonialism, and that has gained from the history. We also have different values, we have principles which have constructed our identity. So we talk about constructivism here. So how constructivism help you to construct know yourself. So India's norms, values, traditions have also created and communicated its identity to the world. When we say how India has communicated its identity to the world, we have constructed our identity in the world front, and that is only based on the history and the tradition. So we have the traditions, and tradition derives from the Dharma Shastra, Manusmritis, and old scriptures. Even Purana, Ramayana, Mahabharata help us to define ourselves, and those scriptures and the traditions also help us to shape the foreign policies. Okay, So we also have values related to equality in means and ends, right? Equity in means and ends. We have values related to ahimsa, non-violence, everything safe our foreign policy. Okay, so when you talk about the geography, that is happened to be the first determinants. Then we have this topography. Then we have the history and this tradition. We also have some of the important father figure which shape the foreign policy. They happen to be the determinants of the foreign policy. In a way, we talk about Gandhi's principles, Mahatma Gandhi's principles. We can talk about Jawaharlal Nehuru's principles, their scientific humanism, as well as idealism of Mahatma Gandhi helped to shape the foreign policy. Okay, so when we talk about determinants, these are the determinants. Apart from it, the very important factor is national interest. That happens to be the determinants of the foreign policy. Okay, national interest is one determinant of the foreign policy, which is actually it is actually overlapping and over dominant determinants of the foreign policy. So in each and every determinants, we get to find the reflection of national interest. Then we see the objective. When you talk about the objective of the foreign policy is to gain foreign aid from both the blocs and other countries. That happens to be one objective. Why we need to have foreign policy? Okay, objective is to get aid, ammunition, and assistance from all other countries. Okay, because we are newly independent state, we do not have that much of infrastructures and other build up in terms of technology, in terms of manpower. So we need training, we need technology, we need assistance, economic assistance, we need aid, and hence we need to have a unique identity of ourselves so that we can get aid and ammunition from all the countries, all other developed countries of the world. And that is one objective of Indian foreign policy. Another objective of Indian foreign policy is world peace and peaceful settlement of international dispute. Here we focus more on peace rather than settlement of the dispute. Okay, so that peace and settlement is actually based on our history and the traditions. What we have derived and stemmed from history determine our objective. At the same time, determinants define the objective. Okay, so we actually have an ideology, and we believe in that ethos of peaceful settlement of international dispute, and we are focusing on the peace rather than war as a means to settle the dispute. But still, we talk about the realism. We also derive all the tenets of realism from Kautilya as well as tenets of idealism from Mahatma Gandhi. Okay. Then another objective is also when we see is also liberation of the newly independent or even colonized country and getting them the membership in United Nations is another aim. So liberation of the colonized country and also getting the newly independent country getting the membership of the United Nations is also another objective of foreign policy. Okay. Then another objective is to give full-fledged support and contribution to United Nations organization. Okay, so like that way we can actually differentiate determinants, objectives, and then principles. When coming to principles, we have a principles related to non-alignment. Okay, another principle is related to Panchashil. So we are quite aligned to Panchashil, and based on the Panchashil principle, we have also concluded a treaty with the China. Okay, we have valued non-alignment because it has given us a unique identity to communicate ourselves across the world, and hence it's very important to focus on our uniqueness, and non-alignment happens to be one principle of Indian foreign policy. And I have been discussing about non-alignment in the previous classes. It has given us uniqueness, and it has given us that identity that we are not a nation of non consequences. Rather, we are a nation, sovereign nation. We happen to be, we in the sense, India, along with other newly independent countries, are also sovereign state having their own judgments, their own identities. They can decide, uh, decide their own good. Okay, and hence when you talk about the principles here, non-alignment happen to be one significant principles. Okay, and then you also have anti-colonialism and anti-racism. These are some of the principles. So hence when you actually discuss about Indian foreign policy, traditionally we have been following on these very determinants, principles and the objective which are a bit overlapping. You might also find that these are overlapping. And at times in exams, when you were asked to write the determinants, then you might also find it a bit confusion that whether it is objective or principles. But you see that all these are overlapping factors. So if you could explain how the determinants shape the objective and how those determinants are based on certain principles, then definitely your answer will be correct. Okay. Then we will be moving to the soft power, which I have already discussed in the last class. Soft power is a very important asset which has also gained prominence after 1970s and 80s. So now soft power has been used by foreign policymakers in an ad hoc basis. In a sense, we get to find a reflection of soft power in Indian politics after 2000 and 2024, not beyond that. Okay, so it has been aligned to Indian foreign policy, and that too in a very manifest way after 2004. Okay, but you see, all our determinants, objectives, and principles are actually aligned to soft power essence, right? Because the term was coined later, hence we can say that okay, these are the factors we are emphasizing more. But right from the very beginning, the shaping of Indian foreign policy, we see that we have been investing a lot on the soft power. Non-alignment is equivalent to soft power. Our commitment to international peace is equivalent to soft power. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the principle that we are harping on, is also based on the soft power. Okay, so these are some of the principles and the objectives of the Indian foreign policy that we are working on, and we are also based on this principle. We are trying to forge relationship with other countries. We are trying to forge bilateral relationship, multilateral relationship with other countries. And then we also see the importance of regional bloc. Now, when you say regional bloc, these are different from power bloc. We have NATO CO2 as power bloc. We also have other military bloc. India happened not to be aligned to any other power bloc, be it NATO, CO2, and any other military bloc. And be a member of non-alignment country and be the spearheader of non-alignment movement, India has made it sure and make it a point that India will not join any kind of power bloc. India will not let its land and water, align water body, being a military base of other power, or India will not be joining to power bloc and also not taking any kind of military arms and ammunition from any kind of any power bloc which were existed. Okay, and we will have our sovereign identity on the basis of non-alignment, that commitment. Okay, but when you talk about a bloc, bloc politics are there. Bloc politics are very important to create a legitimacy of your own land, territory, and region in front of international world, or when you're transacting with other countries. So when we are talking about the bloc politics, we also happen to be the member of regional bloc. You see the ASEAN, we talk about the SAARC, right? South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. We talk about BIMSTEC, Bay of Bengal, multisectoral, technical and economic cooperation, right? We talk about Asian. So there are also other countries, these G8 Z77. These are also some of the blocks. India happened to be a member of G77, right? And we actually G77 are counted as a, like, block of poor countries. Okay, so in that way, what we try to do is to legitimize our self-reliance, and also legitimize our values, our ethos, which are aligned to other regions, in world front. So there is a politics behind this, these blocks. When you talk about the power blocks, these are power blocks only. Huh. And when you're talking about power blocks, in a way, what kind of power it is talking of is economic power, not a military, economic power. Huh. So earlier we talk of power blocks that is aligned to military power, but here we are talking about power blocks which are aligned to economic power. We are talking of political power. We are talking of our cultural power, where we can attain our cultural sovereignty, right? But when we actually find out the importance of regional cooperation, we see it has also uh, focuses on strengthening the mutual trust and understanding and comprehending each other's problem. And hence, there is also a need for regional politics, and you become the member, and India become one country become the member of a regional bloc, as well as to strengthen uh, our collective self-reliance, collective decision-making power, along with those who are aligned or like-minded in terms of, you see, ethnicity, in terms of religiosity, in terms of language, in terms of territorial proximity, in terms of some of the values. Okay, so we need to get a collective decision making forum and collective self-reliance, and that is possible through the regional power block. Okay, now we are talking about the power, and this power are harping on the soft essence, soft power essence, and also smart power. So there are three forms of power basically. We talk of hard power. So hard power went irrelevant after 1980s. It became irrelevant, right? So we talk about that, like ability to get one doing the things, or one country doing the things out of coercion, out of force. But when we talk about the soft power, that is basically the ability to uh, let one country do the things by being convinced that the other country is right. Okay, so we are focusing here on soft power. Now this foreign policy, now in recent foreign policy, focusing on the soft power essence and the regional power bloc. Okay, so the more and more membership that you have, so you also have to have a collective decision making capacity, as well as mutual understanding of your problem, with like-minded others. And meanwhile, we also assure that our membership with one power bloc should not dissuade us becoming the member of other bilateral relations in multilateral forum, as well as other power bloc. Okay, so that is also very important policy when we talk about legitimacy of power block politics. Uh, then we have, okay, yesterday we talked about PD, and also one more important determinants which we tend not to discuss is public opinion. It's very, very important determinants of foreign policy. So which was missed out. So public opinion is very important determinants, and how? Because most of the time foreign policy perspectives are shaped by public opinion. And there are also fourfold classification of public opinion by Hobbes. Hobbes have provide fourfold classification of public opinion. So we have mass opinion, we have activated opinion, we have latent opinion, and then we also have majoritarian opinion. Okay, so when we are talking about a mass opinion is basically opinion of individual being, their preferences, their that any kind of likelihood towards an issue. So these opinions are not guided by any kind of rationality. most of the time, and it doesn't necessarily to have a very informed decision making internally on the individual person. So on certain issues like capital punishment, it is very easier for mass and also an individual without having much study or expertise to say whether he or she is in favor of capital punishment or not. But when we are talking about issues related to India's stand or stand in Israeli and Palestine war, you need to have some kind of rationality and expertise, because you need to have informed decision making and informed choice and informed opinion is supposed to be formed. So here in both this example, the first one, the issue which I have discussed, capital punishment, is basically promote mass opinion. But when we are talking about the Israel and Palestinians conflict and Indian stand and stands on it, we look for activated opinion. So activated opinions are some of the guided opinion from opinion leaders. You might say opinions of the party loyalist and activist. We usually value activated opinion more because they do have the selective exposure and selective retentions of the medias, and based on the selective exposure and retain selectively some of the issues, they develop expertise and make this opinion. So here in foreign policy making, activated opinion is given more precedence or predominance than the, you see, uh, mass opinion. Okay, but at the same time, mass opinion is also very, very important in case of certain issues related to war. Okay, during Indo-China war, mass opinion was valued. Okay, and mass opinion at times help to even mass opinion on foreign policy related issue also aid to stabilize the government and maintaining the equilibrium of this government. Sometimes it will overthrow, it may also bring the government back, and especially when there is a conflict or warlike situation. So in any kind of conflict or warlike situation, definitely we will go for mass opinion instead of activated opinion. And in that case, when we look after the opinion as a determinant, so definitely we are talking about all four kinds of opinion. Third opinion is latent opinion. Latent opinion is there at times which is very superficial among mass of people, which they won't say directly, but they want, that is actually understandable and also deciphered by the political leader most of the time, and it is based on his expertise and how much he can connect psychologically to the masses. There are certain opinions which are always latent, but they won't come up, and that individual and group of people or community population will not come up with that opinion. But yeah, that is already latent. So, as a leader, as a ruling party or as a ruler, he or she is supposed to and is supposed to understand the latent opinion, what it is. Okay, because many a time, population and the people and individual who are always tend to give some mass opinion without having some rationality, they might show some rationality, but as they tend to give some kind of judgment and irrationally, they don't bring it to their focus, because they tend to have that kind of identity that we are not that expert, we are happy giving this kind of opinion along with this. So you need to understand as a ruler, it is also said when we are talking about a foreign policy maker or even the political analyst, it is important to understand the opinion, the latent opinion. It is important to understand the latent opinion of the mass. Okay, then we have another opinion, that is the latent opinion. We have another opinion that is called this majoritarian opinion. What majority perceived? Majoritarian opinion is also, you might say, a media guided opinion. Journalist, you see, journalists, politicians, what they observe. It is basically after the poll has been conducted, after elections, or when policy has been made, that is afterward the policy phase. Here we are talking only about one policy, that is foreign policy. So we also have another unit basically about the policy making. So, but there we are not going to go that details about policy making. But some of the determinants of policy making are very important. How policies are being made. So when we talk about policy making, then also you need to know about the opinion, because the policies are based on the opinions. Okay, so here majoritarian opinions are basically media generated opinion which is being established by the media and established in the public sphere, that is generated by this media. That is known as a majoritarian opinion, and that is not, you see, that is most of the time that majoritarian opinion is aftermath the policy making. That is not before the policy making. That is also one of the characteristics of majoritarian opinion, and it also it actually becomes an irony that we see that as a media we cannot save the policy, but we can discuss the policy. Right. So politicians definitely look after the opinion of activated public. They might also look after the latent opinion and even some mass opinion. They will definitely prefer because they need to stay in power. But when we talk about the majoritarian opinion, that is media generated, that is basically decision is being taken, and also maybe final scrutiny is left, and now it is open to the forum and the media to discuss, and media now got that issue for discussions, and opinion is being generated. So that is a majoritarian opinion that we say. Okay, then we also have discussed about public diplomacy and nation branding. Okay, public diplomacy is basically a mechanism to project your nation to the international public and domestic public. So this is a mechanism. When I say mechanism, because it involves a lot of variables. We have discussed about those variables yesterday. Right, we have discussed about the goals, about the context, about the strategies, about the budget, about the media, about the timeline, about the channel, about the actor and initiators. So we see that these variables, which actually shape variables, although variables, I'm talking about the variable, these are not variable, these are constant. This is not subject to change. Maybe you see later on with changing situations, we might also see some changes in this, and that's how you can also say it's a variable. So when you use the word variable, that is also subject to change, right? So we actually see that all these variables usually constitute the mechanism of public diplomacy, which we discussed in last class, right? So in public diplomacy, we need to know the essence of soft power. So how Indian government have been using the soft power in public diplomacy. And when we talk about the public diplomacy, now in present era, we basically focus on the people's diplomacy. People's diplomacy is a term first coined in South Korea in 2017. So a few years back, that term was coined, and also it got uh, a widespread recognitions where people become the agent of diplomacy, because through interactions, through participation in various social media forums, social media platforms, they determine the mood of interactions. They also shape the image of the nations. At the same time, they also give government directives of what to do, what not to do. So in that way, people take part in diplomatic effort, and hence we talk about new public diplomacy as a people's diplomacy, or when you talk about the diplomacy of present era, is all about people's diplomacy. Just because it is two-way, it is not a one-way. When we talk about the traditional diplomacy, which we discussed in the last class, that is basically one-way communication between government to government, and also you see this government official, foreign secretaries, ministries are visiting other countries and also disseminating information to the people about confidence building measure, disseminating information to the public about new policies which are being formed, memorandum of understanding which are being signed. Right, so the information which was being disseminated to the public in the traditional diplomacy was one way, but here in new public diplomacy, we are talking about two-way dissemination of information. In two-way dissemination of information, technology will have a very important role to form. So when we talk about the technology, we are bringing the social media technology. Not only the government handling of different platforms, we talk about YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You need to study those Twitter handler of the government, of public diplomacy unit, and also Facebook handler of public diplomacy division of government. We are supposed to study so that you can have some understanding about the latest trend of foreign policy issues. Okay, and the news which are percolating, and that is what is debating this landscape. So it's very important to also go through and study and how it is being used by the government, how many likes, dislikes are being received. Okay, many a time it is said that it's organically generated, sometimes it is said it's not organically generated, it is algorithmic based. But still, when we talk about the new public diplomacy, it's basically a two-way public diplomacy, right? Because of the use of the social media, yesterday I have told you. And also, emergence of different cluster of people and their engagement with the diplomacy has also made new public diplomacy newer. In a way, we talk about young enthusiastic populations. They are involving themselves in new public diplomacy and carrying the image of the nation outside the world, right? And then we also have the diaspora community, which was out of focus initially in traditional diplomacy. Now we have received a lot of remittances from diaspora communities. Yesterday also I have told you, right? There are 70 million people. They are also concentrated in more than 150 countries. So we actually see that we have received a lot of remittances from the diaspora communities and also skills. Okay, and diaspora community can also help in various developmental policies in India. Okay, help us to build our campaign. And also shape our economic diplomacy, shape our cultural diplomacy. Hence, diaspora happens to be another, you see, cluster of engagement with the foreign policy. They are another cluster to be engaged with the foreign policy. Another and more vibrant cluster in which will be engaged in the new foreign policy and has been engaged with the new foreign policy is the you say um, the South Asian nations, newly emerging South Asian nations. So India forging a relationship with the newly emerging South Asian nations when we actually talking about India's bilateral relationship with the neighborhood countries and helping them to take some informed decision by disseminating correct information about and disseminating information about our policies, our internal situation, okay, and also seek for mutual trust and understanding is another facets of new public diplomacy. So here we have got three cluster of families. One is uh, politically enthusiastic youth, second is diaspora, and third is newly emerging South Asian nations, which are neighboring countries. Huh. So, forging a relationship and promoting relationship with all three clusters of people will also help to enhance the national image. Why this emerging nations? Because of our, uh, you see, uh, the affinity of the culture, affinity of the religion, and also that mutuality in terms of developmental aims and goals and achievement and outcome. So we have of similar, most of the countries are having similar kind of problem, tensions, conflicts, and having similar religions and the language, there are also similarities. So we also seek more understanding and you see mutual support from the neighboring countries, and neighboring countries also help to project our image in front of the world. Okay, and hence when we talk about this new public diplomacy, that is another very important aspect of Indian foreign policy that came after 2004 and 2006, when we actually see that Ministry of NRI had changed its name to Ministry of uh, that Overseas Affairs, right? Uh, Yesterday also I have discussed, so I'm not going to go that deep with this public diplomacy, but if you have some questions, you can raise it. Okay. Um, then we see that there are some identifiable areas which will help you to understand new public diplomacy and even the traditional diplomacy. There are some identifiable areas when we talk about what public diplomacy is doing. What are the aspects of public diplomacy? So public diplomacy is basically working for cultural appeal. When you talk about a cultural appeal, so how much cultural heritage we have retained by branding ourselves in such a way that we create references for outer that international public people outside India for us. Okay, so that is a cultural appeal. The retention of the culture and the heritage is one very aspect of public diplomacy, or you might also say new public diplomacy. Then you talk about the emotional appeal. Emotional appeal is basically related to how much our country is being appreciated, how much our country is being adored, how much our country is being valued in international world, and that is based on the nation branding, what I discussed yesterday. Okay, so nation branding is different from public diplomacy. Yesterday I have discussed, but both these terminologies are intertwined and connected. But differences between the two terminologies are also supposed to be known, which I have discussed. Okay, but nation branding is also pretty much a part of public diplomacy. So by branding a nation in such a way, how much emotional you see assets you have derived from the international public. How much values we have created across outside the world, how much appreciation we have gained, how much admirations we have gained is related to emotional appeal of public diplomacy. Then we talk of the political appeal. When you say political appeal, I have been telling you that we have a very stable democracy. So promoting that stable democracy, promoting our role in multilateral forum, and our advocacy of certain issues, our contribution to United Nations organizations happens to construct the political appeal of public diplomacy. So when we talk about our role in multilateral forum, like regional forum, multilateral Asia Pacific, BIMSTEC, you talk about SARC, okay, you talk about the 8 and the 77 countries. So you get to find the issues which we are advocating. We are advocating for, like, um, environmental sustainability. We are advocating some counter-terrorism measure. We are advocating elimination of poverty, illiteracy. We are advocating for health for all program. Right. We are also advocating for food for all. So, in align to other specialized agencies of the United Nations, what we are advocating, and that has also constitute the political appeal of, you see, India, of the nation. So we also see that when you understand India's contribution to UN, it is very important to understand India's contribution to UN, because this is very political, this constitutes a political appeal, and also this is one very aspect, and you see the determinants of Indian foreign policy, our contribution to United Nations organization. In one class, briefly we have discussed about our contribution, the kind of contribution that India has offered to United Nations organization. You might say, like we happen to have the president in General Assembly from India, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, and she has used her diplomatic talent to get more than 16 countries admitted into United Nations organization. Right? We also have B.N. Rao and Nagendra Singh as the Justice, Chief Justice of International Court of Justice. Right. So that is our contribution. Second contribution. You might see that India happened to be the largest contributor to peacemaking operation across the world. So when we are talking about peacekeeping, sorry, not peacemaking, it is peacekeeping, peacekeeping operations. So India happened to contribute to many troops. India has sent peacekeeping operation to South Korea, to Congo, to Yugoslavia. If you look into the situation of those countries during 1916 and the 70s, and India happened to be one mediator and also peacemaker in all those countries. In terms of Congo, you also see it happened to be the country under Belgian rule. So once it is decolonized, some disruption came up and disorder came up for which Congo seek for help from United Nations organization. And once it seek help from United Nations father organization father seek support from India to send the troop to Congo. Okay, and India happened to be the member nation and secretary of the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission, and accordingly, India spearheaded uh, that troop to North Korea and give custody to prisoners of war. Okay, and that way India contributed to United Nations uh, peacemaking agenda. Right, India happened to be a propagator of world peace, and India has been contributing consistently to the peacekeeping operations as well as various peaceful settlement of the dispute in United Nations organization. Okay, and that constitutes the political level of you see public diplomacy. So our contribution to United Nations organization is also part of public diplomacy. Although public diplomacy, the word came in 1965, that was first propounded by Edmund Gallian. But prior to it, we actually see some of the diplomatic effort which is based on soft power, which is based on non-violence, very much rooted in our history and the tradition, actually shows our values, our essence. Okay, so we are not believer of hard power in that way. We are believer of soft power. But at the same time, our national interest, I have been reiterating the same thing, that national interest happen to be one determinant because of which we also focus on a realism. We focus on realism blending with idealism. We also went for not signing nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and we went for that nuclear test just because a blend of realism and idealism that determine the national interest of Indian foreign policy. Right. So then, what you can say that um, recently you can also discuss about if you want to study more. I'm not touching one territory because India has close bilateral relations with China, with African countries, Persian Gulf countries, with USA, USSR, and there are so many treaties and agreement you are supposed to study if you want to write about bilateral relationship. Usually, a foreign policy analyst, they study the bilateral relationship. Okay, so you are supposed to study some of the agreements and what are the key tenets of those agreements, what it tries to look after, what it sought after is supposed to be written down and analyzed. Okay, but that is another aspect. We are not going that deep to study the bilateral relationship between the countries. But if you say we can but for that also, you have to be very pinpointed. We have discussed about Kashmir issue because of the situation. So India's role in Kashmir is important. even for exam also. So you need to give your own interpretation now. Your opinion is important. And our relationship with neighboring countries, with Nepal, with Sri Lanka, with Myanmar, with Indonesia, with even Afghanistan, with USSR, with USA. So it's very important. Okay, if you want to know more with Bhutan, so but you see, it becomes a class of international relation then. But when you study those international relation, bilateral relations of countries, basically we looked everything from those perspectives. One is feminist perspective, one is critical theory, another one is constructivism, another one is realism, and also from idealism. We have discussed here three construct. We have discussed realism, idealism, and constructivism in determining the Indian foreign policy. Feminism is there because we India have been advocating for women empowerment, for women literacy, right from the very beginning. In that way, we can also see some feminist perspective, which we can incorporate in studying the foreign policy and our relationship with other countries. If we see the agendas, if you see the regional agendas, if you see the agenda of any agreement, okay, then it will be helpful from which theoretical framework you will be using. Okay, okay, then I'm finishing it today. So I'm finishing this international thing. Okay, and international relation, and one more aspect which is very important to understand. Okay, regarding the soft power, yesterday we have discussed about the soft power, right? So you need to evaluate the types of soft power that India have. So tell me some of the soft powers that we have. Raju, tell me soft power, one soft power that we have. Okay, okay. You tell me. Bono, soft power. Huh? Yoga. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah. That is another Ayurveda, yeah, another one. Then, yeah. So that is also true, but yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. Then, Nikita will anyhow, you know, that's why yeah. You tell me, always, yeah. And then, food culture, yeah, always, yeah. Then, yeah, yeah. Okay, it's very important. You want to, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Soft power. When you are talking about the soft power, you need to identify now the asset. You know the definition. You see this are when you talk about two-way communication, our engagement with policies. That is kind of mechanism that has enhanced the soft power. But when you talk about the assets, soft power asset, suppose when you say yoga, Ayurveda, these are soft power assets that we have been promoting. What unique India have? Okay, so what constitute our identity? So when we talk about the constructivism, you see the constructivistic approach actually focusing on how our values, our even ethos, our principles are constructing our identity and communicating the same to the world. Okay, so here when we see the soft power asset, there are some of the identity marker you need to draw. So, like yoga happens to be one identity marker, you right? two sentences on yoga. Ayurveda, we talk about aggressive promotion of Indian culture by Indian government. That is a part of soft power policy. Although ad hocly they are doing, we do not have well set and well framed policy. Hence, we are saying that soft power is being integrated to Indian foreign policy in an ad hoc way because we do not have a framework. But yeah, in what way government is doing, we can say the Kumbh Mela, organizing this Kumbh Mela, organizing the first foreign policy conferences in Hindi language. You see, and you see the reflection of IS cadre. Mostly they are now coming from the regional and provincial like from provinces, from regions. Earlier, they do have only one identity, that nation. They're English educated, anglicized, having that poetic, that diplomatic tongue. But now you get to find IS cadre from the provinces, from the rural background, from the regions, different regions, from rural hinterland, and they do have a different kind of tongue, and it's okay to have that, celebrating that Indianness. That is another soft power. Okay, we are talking about Bhagavad Gita. When Narendra Modi is also gifting each and every premier from outside the Bhagavad Gita, that is another example of, that is exemplar of this exemplary of soft power. Let's talk about this Bhagavad Gita. Okay, then you can also write down this Bhagavad Gita, and then you can talk about sports. Sports happen to be a very important aspect of soft power. You talk about the sports, Indian sports, how it has created harmony between two nations. Sports diplomacy itself is one very important soft power asset because it creates harmony between two nations. Right. And you also see Bollywood. Yesterday we have discussed about the Bollywood. Although Bollywood is made with a motto that buy Indian, be Indian and buy Indian, but it happened to be a reverse way around. Be Indian, buy Indian, but be and flaunt foreign, like that kind of motto that it is working on. But Bollywood happened to be one kind of soft power asset. Yesterday we have discussed about the power of Bollywood outside the world. Okay. Then we talk about you see our our music, our culture, food culture, Hindustani music. Okay, and also various dances that also comprise the soft power. Huh. And when you talk about cultural exchange between two countries in bilateral relationship, comprise one soft power. Cultural exchange in terms of any kind of exhibition is being shown, when Indian artifact, Indian culture is being portrayed, is also one kind of soft power engagement between two nations. We talk about academic exchange. We are getting faculty from outside. It's also a kind of soft power diplomacy. And we are going there. We are studying there outside. We are availing a scholarship from other countries and studying for 2 months, 3 months in Qatar, in USA. Is also a kind of soft power diplomacy between the two nations. And we are also we are getting someone on scholarship basis is also equivalent to soft power. We have two institutions, and if you study the tradition of the institution, ICCR and ICWA, you get to know about their soft power diplomacy, what they are doing regarding improving and also promoting the scholastic tradition in India. Okay, so those are the parameters and identity markers of the soft power. So if you get a question, you need to explain. If you write only two identity marker of the soft power, two assets, write about two assets of the soft power. You write about two, like any, you need to explain it, how yoga is being promoted. After we have International Yoga Day as 21st soon. Yes. So we need to talk about this. And now it is also made mandatory for the civil servant to be trained um, in yoga and Ayurveda. They are supposed to know, and they are supposed to promote yoga and Ayurveda beyond India. Okay, so these are some of the markers of the soft power. Okay, Then the press and the media. I have told you about public broadcasting. It happened to be one model of soft power. We have three models. One is Cold War model, one is public broadcasting, and another one is non-state transactional model. Okay, and now non-state transactional model is more important in terms of promoting the soft power and new public diplomacy in the context of new public diplomacy, because we are also trying to bring in more and more number of NGOs to advocate the causes of India. So we find out some of the issues and the realities of the society, and those NGOs can advocate the realities more fluently and smoothly than anyone else. And hence, we are also bringing those non-state actors to transact the image of this nation while transacting with other countries and forging relationship with other countries. And initially, we have that public broadcasting model. It is through which government disseminated propaganda also. During Cold War, public broadcasting happened to be used. It was used by government to disseminate propaganda. Okay, but now we talk about public broadcasting models which are there, and we get to find in 27 countries. We have public broadcasting stations and also broadcast Indian culture, Indian talks, Indian news for 8 hours in some countries, 2 hours to 3 hours. Yesterday I have discussed. And also there are some outlets when we talk about social media. These are all soft power. We talk about wire, we are talking about scroll, how they are disseminating the image of the India negatively and positively. So when we talk about the public diplomacy, this equivalent to soft power is an asset, right? Public diplomacy itself is a soft power. Okay, it is not a hard power, but it can also arise from conflict-prone situation. You cannot see that there is no way to discuss about soft power in a conflict-prone situation. No, it is related to our identity. Bhutan has been talking about soft power because Bhutan doesn't believe in any kind of realism. It believes only in constructivism. Their day's food, what they eat, that define themselves, and made it mandatory for everyone to wear the dress code, and also make it a point to each and every tourist. Make it a point to make each and every tourist wear the Bhutanese dress once if you go to Bhutan. That is also a kind of constructivism perspective of soft power. We also have idealist perspective of soft power. Right. So we need to, okay, it's very important to also discuss about the software. We will able to answer that. Okay. So I'll share some of the articles, but as I have been telling you that my questions will not be that straightforward from an article. So whatever I have discussed in the class, you also retain some of the points so that you can write. It's all about how you understand one concept, and how with the help of secondary review and also interaction with your teachers and your faculty concerned, writing an answer. Okay, okay, it's fine.